Hello my friends, I'm Rick and this is your seat at the table, and this is the complete Druids Handbook for 2nd edition Advanced Dungeons & Dragons. And I think this came out in 92 or 93. And paid $18 for it, so this might have came out a little bit, 1994. So they started raising the rates a little bit because most of them were 15 bucks, and now they're going up to $18, which, you know, if you look at it, I was looking at comparisons. So I was looking at the book, like the book here that Dr. Dread was gracious enough to send to me. The purchase price originally was $35. So, you know, considering that we're talking 94, you know, over 30 years ago, the prices are not too out of line. I mean, compared to a lot of crazy shit today with the rising prices and stuff, you know, it's a possible, you know, it could have been much higher. And there are certain game material I see come out and they're asking god awful prices for them, and I'm thinking, I want that so bad, but I can't pay $100 for something. I don't want it that bad. So we get the Druidic organization, the essential Druid, proficiency crossovers, this magical items, this secret language, shape changing. Characters belonging to almost all Druidic branches can shape change into various animal forms. So, turning undead, higher level Druids, Druidic branches. And the complete book of humanoids offers 4 new races for Druid PCs: the Dryad, the Elf, the Halfling, and the Lizard. The Giantkin Lizard, that's more than 4. Jesus. Druidic branch portraits, the Arctic Druid, the Desert Druid. That was one of the things about Druids. Druids are also not unlike some other classes. They're lesser known. Of the magically inclined classes, and for a lot of players that want to play them, they kind of have a unique version of view of what a druid is, and usually it's, in my experience, the about half of them, or maybe less than half of these people, have a Wiccan ideology in mind. When they think I'm going to be a druid, they're thinking of the Wiccan version of a druid kind of thing, and not traditional role-playing fantasy setting druids. But druids are kind of I call them nature's clerics or nature's magicians, because they're more inclined, their skills and stuff are more inclined that way. Anyway, Desert Druid, Grey Druid, I Druid that's underground, dealing with lynchings and folds and slimes and other nocturnal things. The Forest Druid, the Jungle Druid, the Mountain Druid, the Plains Druid, the Swamp Druid, the multi and dual class druids. So a Fighter Druid, a Wizard Druid, a Thief Druid, high level dual class druids, agriculture, expanded roles, how did the farm perform, figuring out farm profitability, harvest cash value. We get into the various kits. So we have the advisor. As a druid, your character can act as or work to become a counselor to a ruler, perhaps a local knight or king, a high king. Think of Merlin, whom older tales cast as a druid. Right? The Avenger, the Beast Friend. I remember I played in a campaign, we were talking about 25 years ago, and the theme was that kind of theme. So everybody had to be was in that Beast Friend, Beastmaster kind of role. So there was like 4 of us, I think, that were playing, and so we all picked character classes and races that were tweaked to this save the forest kind of save the world kind of campaign, based on something that was corrupting the ecology or something like that. I don't remember. The guy that ran the show was the dungeon master at the time was an eclectic, an eccentric fellow at best. Guardian, Hive Master, the Lost Druid, the Natural Philosopher, the Outlaw Druid, Pacifist, Savage. Oh my God. I was reading through Pacifist here a few days ago, and I got thinking. I says, I had always had that one guy, and it was a girl that did this to us too once. It's going to be a pacifist. I don't believe in violence. I'm not carrying weapons. Oh my God, that was such a pain in the ass. I don't remember how either one of those scenarios panned out, but yeah, right. A pacifist in an adventuring camp group. I suppose the savage, the shapeshifter, the tometic druid, the village druid, the wandering druid. So abandoning kits, modifying and creating kits. So we get into the Druidic order. The circles, Druidic demographics, circles and branches, initiates, high-level druids, druids, archdruids, the moot, great druids, the ban, the challenge, the grand druid. So the rules state over the entire world of a given fantasy setting, there can only be one grand druid. It's just like there can only be in the monks, there can only be one grandmaster, and there can't be one grand druid over here and another one over there because they're two different groups. Now, of all the druid groups and all the druid circles, there can only be X amount of great druids and only one grand druid. I think there's 13 great druids and one grand druid. And so you end up getting to a point where you believe you should be the grand druid. You're going to become a master druid. And then you're going to confront and challenge the existing grand druid to a duel. And if you win, then you become the wonderful position, that #1 spot among all druids on your given planet. This doesn't necessarily mean, though, that the grand druid is the highest ranked, highest skill wise. You could be a 15th level druid and manage to beat a 25th level druid, but you could also be a 25th level druid and have a 15th level grand master, and the only reason is because you choose not to go and challenge the grand druid for that position. You don't want the bullshit that goes with the chair. The hierophant druid, the shadow circle, the shadow druid, membership to the shadow circle, the shadow master, inner circle, shadow clave. The highest level druid in the shadow circle, using an archdruid or druid, takes command of the group as the shadow master. Not to be confused with because there can only the grand wizard, the grand druid. There can only be there can only be one, even if they're a member of the shadow circle. Creating a Druidic history, and he gives us some examples. Druidic faith, druids who worship gods, life after death, the nature of the gods, the neutral alignment. Druids' responsibilities, keeper of balance, defense of the wilderness. I always had new players who wanted to play a druid, and I says, okay, so write down the basic tenets of what your druid's responsibilities are, and try to hold to them as much as possible. Write them into your character, develop your character. Your character becomes the character that it's going to be, but try to remember that otherwise, I see this over and over again. And I don't care what game system you play. I always see two things: a player who is acting in a role for a character, but is using their real-world knowledge or knowledge that the character should not have available to them to advance the character. And it's such a hard thing not to do. It's hard not to call it out when you see it, but it's even harder not to do it because we all get susceptible to that at some point. The other problem is people who choose a particular class and then do everything that they can to to shut that down. I mean, the idea is that you want to be a druid, but then you act more like a ranger, or you do something. You're acting completely out of character for the class that you chose your character to have. And at that point, you have to. There might be a reckoning where something occurs in game that revokes their status in that particular class, if that's available. So the things like the druid circles, that's a real thing. It's possible for them to come along and say, look, you need to stop calling yourself a druid of the desert, because you're not a druid at all. You don't do anything like you're supposed to. You don't follow the tenets. So eyes in the wilderness, animal aids, human and demi-human assets. Many of the players that want to play druids, their main primary one is they want that animal companion. They want them animal servants, or those animal tools, because it's so cool. And then they don't know how to utilize them or take care of them or represent them in the way that should be appropriate for what they're doing. Druidic ceremonies, character strategy, find the root of the problem. Yeah. How exactly how do druids go about fulfilling the responsibilities discussed above? Role-playing terms, there are some interesting strategies the player can use to make the most of your druid character's potential. Suppose a druid Danny wish to preserve an old wood, but the local baron and his peasant want to cut it down, claiming they need the land to plant crops to keep from going hungry. What does the druid do? Find the root of the problem, negotiate a solution. Perhaps there's a reason why their current crops are not producing very well. Maybe there's a blight, or there's a curse, or they're just idiots, and they were stonemasons before the local baron told them that they had to be farmers, and they don't have any idea how to be a farmer. So, hit and run, defense, war, revenge, relations with others, woodcutters and hunters, the local animals, Sylvan and fairy creatures, outlaws, fugitives, and bandits, local monsters, evil humanoids. Now it's interesting because I read in here that druids don't necessarily have to be anti-humanoid. Druids in general, life is life, and even though the quote evil races of the world are aberrations against all things good and living, they're still living beings and living creatures that fit within the world's ecology, and have, in some people's eyes, have their right to do so. And as long as they're not out there, as long as the orcs are not hacking the trees down and tearing up the ground, the druids tend to not care what that the orcs are raiding the local villages and burning their crops. In some cases, that actually might suit the needs. Okay, there's something fuzzy in there. I thought I was pushing my foot up against a cat under the table. There's so many cats in this house. It's scary. Right? There's a mama back here. I had the door open most of the morning so she could go in. She wandered around, investigated the bedroom and stuff, and then I come in here, started doing videos. Next thing I know, she's up here sleeping by the window. Okay, door's open. I'm trying to get her used to going out with the rest of the cats, because it's getting to the point where she needs to get out of the room more, and she doesn't. It's not necessarily good for her to be locked up all the time. And I use the term locked up loosely. We just trying to keep her separate from the other cats so there's no fights. And we introduce things to them little at a time and let them get used to each other, kind of stuff. Anyway, back to rangers, local monsters, rangers and elves, gnomes, halflings, dwarves. This is how the druids, they tell you how they ought to or think they should. There's just guidelines to give you an idea, because at the end of the day, the player is going to decide how his character is going to react or handle a given situation and what they're going to do. So personality types: the diplomat, the gardener, the idealist, mysterious figure, nurturer, rustic, traditionalist, fanatic, the misanthrope. The druid campaigns, all are mostly druids. I have never, honestly, pretty sure I have not run a just straight up druid based campaign. It's not something that ever came up. Guardians of the Wild, Against the Shadows, the Evil Woods. We got some new spells. Alright. And then we get back here and get past the spell part. because you get into things like new magic items, potions, weapons, rings, miscellaneous magic. I don't care about that. How's that? Seeds of Plenty, the Serpent Seeds, Cloak of the Beasts. Locating herbs. Okay, so we get into this section back here and we talk about herbal magic, because I've had characters ask me about that stuff. And not just druids, but people want to play a cleric, wants to know how to be able to, wants to be able to specialize in seeing herbs and plants and other things in the wild and knowing how to apply them, you know, as healing elements. And so preserving herbal ingredients, making an herbal brew, types of herbal brews. You know, for example, crawlbane, darkweed, deathmock, friendflower, ghost root, springberry, nevermind, hushthorn. Then we got the secret grove itself. Features of a secret grove. Traditionally, druids at some point establish a grove, and the grove, it doesn't necessarily serve as a function, as a focus, or a way to enhance their abilities or power, but it becomes their sanctuary, their place in the cosmos, and they feel that they're responsible for it. And over time, some druids become so attached to their groves that it becomes almost impossible and even painful for them to leave it for any length of time until they pass away. And even then, sometimes beyond that, they linger, their spirits linger behind. You know, guards and wards, tending the grove, becoming a steward, grove law, sanctifying, awakening a grove, lesser magical groves, magical sacred groves, greater groves, defiled and cursed grove, standing stones, reclaiming cursed or defiled groves, non-magical standing stones, magical standing stones. Alright. We got general abilities. The original edition Druids, the information that came out of the original red and blue books, and version and first edition. Alright. So there's so much, and this is such a challenging character class, but can also be as boring as hell to some people. So it's a lot of aspects, I think, in my opinion, personal opinion, character classes in general are something that are guidelines. I want to do this, and this seems to be fun and interesting, and I like this kit, this set of parameters that's already set up, and so I'm going to try to do my best to play that role, or to operate a character under that guise. The other side is that there's so many people that misconstrue or misunderstand how these things work, or don't take the time, right? And then there's the player, the expectations. Sometimes my expectations are higher than they ought to be for a player, and I see potential, or I see what I would like the game to be like, and I have to constantly rein that in. And in part, it's because I haven't been in a group for, well, it's going on 7 years now. I mean, it's just the way things change, the way life goes, is what it is. Anyway, yeah, this is the Druid's Handbook. I think we're about done today. Don't you think? It's a beautiful weekend, Memorial Day weekend. Doing a patch of videos today, trying to get some stuff in my inventory. So, because next weekend I'll have to do some videos for Cycle 14 for my my would-be game. You know, so I like to try to have 5 to 6 videos in storage. So if I have a weekend that suddenly gets cut short or something happens, I got something to post. And as you can tell, I try to put something out every 2 days, and sometimes my stuff is not as good as it could be, and because I'm trying to do so much stuff in such a short window. I mean, the shorter videos, in my personal opinion, don't come off as well as the longer videos, because I don't know, it feels like I'm trying to rush through something. Every now and then I run across something that I'm going to review, and I don't really have a whole lot of interest in it in one way or another, other than just acknowledging it's part of the collection and what it's about. And then there are others, as you well know. I get off on a tangent or a rant or rave, or all of them. It is what it is. So, anyway, till next time, you guys have yourself a great weekend.